Hello, everyone, and apologies for this delay. We were having serious technical problems, and it was showing a beautiful New York apartment and with a huge piano as though it were mine, which it isn't. As you can see, this is where I live. And our guests were not being on screen. Some of them were being shown in a green screen. So anyway, to cut a long story short, here we are, and I would like to get to show our filmmakers and also to introduce you to our moderator today. But before I do that, I have to get back to my screen so I can pull all the information about our guests. But let me first talk to you about the films, because I know the films and I can tell you a little bit about them until I can get to the introductions properly. We have 4 films today that we are going to be discussing. One of them is a feature film called Good Morning, directed by Bahij Hojeij and produced by Bahij Hojeij and Sam Lahoud. And both of them are here with us in the studio. And we also have with us Jen Marlowe, who is the director of the 2 documentary shorts on Palestine. We're going to see them, we'll talk about them shortly, and I will post the titles properly so everybody knows what we are talking about. And we also have with us Emma Schwartz, who is the director of the other short documentary, which is also a Palestinian story. And this one is about a brewery in Palestine. So we're going to have a chance to hear out the filmmakers. But in a second, after I have made my proper introductions here, so sorry about all this. It's just crazy. We've been doing this for a few times now, and this never happened. And today, suddenly, I'm unable to go on screen. So without further ado, let me introduce you our moderator today, who is Nadim Shehadi. Nadim Shehadi is the executive director of the Lebanese American University's Academic Center in New York. He is also an associate fellow of Middle East and North Africa program at Chatham House in London. He was previously the director of the Faris Center for Eastern Mediterranean Studies at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, Tufts University. We are very happy to have Nadim with us, and he will be moderating the talk. Here is Nadim, and I will put a banner so you can see Nadim, if you can wave so people know which one is Nadim. Yes, exactly. And we are very happy about this collaboration because this program of the 3 shorts and the narrative feature are brought to you in collaboration with the Lebanese American University. If the lockdown had not happened and the festival was taking place as it was supposed to back in March, we were going to have this program live in the flesh at the Lebanese American University headquarters, upstairs exactly, on 46th Street. And, it was maybe next year. So I'm not giving up hope that we'll get back to normal. And next year in 2021, the Socially Relevant Film Festival is going to have a proper festival. So, but this is not bad because here you have people from Lebanon joining us, which otherwise we would not have been able to have. So let me go quickly and introduce the filmmakers. And we have director Bahij Hojeij. Everybody, when I put your name, please wave so we know who you are. And then we have Good Morning producer Sam Lahoud. And we have with us the short films is Palestine Revisited, the short films blog. We have Ibrahim's Tree, and Just Before Dawn, director Jen Marlowe. And we are very happy to have Brewed in Palestine director Emma Schwartz. Yay! We're all there and it's working. So happy to see you all. Thank you all filmmakers for bringing us your wonderful films. The Socially Relevant Film Festival's 7th edition is online, and I leave you all in Nadim's able hands. I'm going to check myself out and wait for you in the green room so I can send you the comments in questions if people are asking questions. And also I can communicate with you in private chats. Bye now. Have fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're on our own. I hope everybody managed to see the films. Were you able to see each other's films? And the audience has had time to watch them too. I'm going to start by asking Bahij and Sam a question, because I know their partner in this, who's the writer I'm going to ask if there is any autobiographical link to this, because I can imagine all of you sitting in the cafe in Hamra and in the Café de Paris, and then after it shut down, I think everybody moved to the Bristol, and there were always the same people sitting on the same table. So is that part of cafe? Is the film meant to evoke this? I mean, there are so many themes in that film.
Yeah, the film is based on the story of Rashid Al-Daif.
Yeah.
بس بحكي qu'il a écrit à partir d'observations de plusieurs cafés.
I will be translating for Bahij because he's better in French than in English, so I will be translating. Okay.
Okay.
You can't hear me. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Nadim, for the question. In fact, as Bahij explained to me when we started the film, and now he's also reminding me of this, that the story is in fact based on the observations of the writer Rashid Daif, who wrote a non-published novel. You know, he wrote just the story on a couple of papers. It was not like a story and adapted for the cinema. It was written as a short story and then transformed into a script by both Mr. Hojeij and Mr. Daif. And this is based on personal observation of the writer Rashid Daif, of two older gentlemen, senior age gentlemen.
More than two, but
yes, many people in cafes.
And,
so he observed
yes.
exactly. Excuse me. He was observing people in this third age phase of their life, and writing some short observational notes. And then he built this script based on all those, and especially two persons that he met in person that used to sit in a cafe and solve crosswords every day to fight Alzheimer. So it was a mixture of observation of two characters that are somehow similar to those who are in the film and other people of the same age.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I used to meet. Can you all hear me well?
Yes, now it's good.
Now it's better. Yeah,
No.
I used to meet Rashid in the cafe, but I didn't do the crosswords.
Yeah. He works in a cafe, Rashid.
Rashid, he writes
He
in a
writes,
cafe.
yes,
He sits in a cafe and he writes. This is his working place.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly. Like many, maybe authors.
Yeah, like many other authors of.
Yes. Like Najib Mahfouz, for example.
Yeah.
I think.
And what's the connection with? I mean, what are the other themes that you think are brought up in the film? Other than, I mean, there's Alzheimer, there's the war, there is the relation between the two men and the woman and the young man, and I can imagine this happening in other places, like in Ramallah or in Jerusalem or in London or anywhere else. The sort of cafe. I was once told by a filmmaker in London that a cafe is a place where you can sit alone in company. And
exactly. Le scénario a été écrit pour situer ces deux vieux-là dans un seul lieu, mais essentiellement aussi pour observer la rue. Parce qu'il y a la rue. Le mot posé, c'est un alibi, ce n'est qu'un alibi pour justement parler des choses, des événements et des contradictions de toute la société qui sont soit dans le café, soit à l'extérieur du café à travers la baie vitrée. Voilà.
Okay, the film targets different layers. In fact, it has different layers, and mainly there is and many topics. So mainly there is what's happening in the cafe between those two characters and the other characters inside the cafe from different generations, and also it reflects another layer what's happening in the streets from this. Large window where they sit and observe as if they are observers of the life of Beirut and of the life of any other city. So you know, Beirut is symbolic here. It's not only the city, it can be any other city, as you mentioned now. So those two senior citizens and those well-shaped characters, they are observers of the city, and they are its memory. So they also remember stories from their life. So there is the layer of what's happening inside the cafe between those two characters and how they interact with other characters. There is another layer which is the streets of the city, of this city, and what's happening of it, and the relationship. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the relationship between the characters and what's happening outdoor. And there's a third layer which is what's happening on the TV screen. And the TV screen reflects our involvement in all the accidents that happen in the world. And there is the fourth layer, which is the building that is going down and being destroyed throughout the film. And if you observe, those who watch the film, they observe the deterioration of the story. So everything in the cafe goes is being broken and is deteriorating with the fall of the building and with the fall of the whole society.
Exactly.
Right. Now, in that cafe, they were drinking mainly coffee. They were not drinking Taibe beer.
Yeah.
Because Taibe beer does not reach Beirut.
No, we have Almasa. So the beer is from Palestine.
So I want to move.
And the setting we have many bottles and alcohol. But you know. The coffee is le truc essentiel.
Yeah. Although we have a lot of bottles in the background, but the coffee is the essential ingredient, which
yes, and it's old coffee, you know, and everybody comes to drink coffee only.
Yeah,
and maybe juice. but it's not a. C'est pas un parti pris. On n'a pas montré de l'alcool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. Alcohol does not show in the coffee, not because of any position or standing. It's just
because it's the morning.
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, I was
Exactly.
trying to make a link with the other film with
Yeah.
Emma.
Yeah, I know, of course.
Good segue. Good segue.
Exactly.
I
Smooth.
mean, you could be drinking mate. Mate also has
Great.
No, we drink cognac. No.
Yeah.
Cheers.
So Emma, I mean, your film has many layers too. It's about resistance, about family business, about building a state, about relations with Israel, about how much, also about peace, because you can't help thinking that if there weren't all these obstacles, Taibbi Bir would be doing much better. And so the state is being strangled in the same way as Taibbi Bir is being strangled. So, can you tell us a bit more about what you can read? I mean, you can read a lot in a coffee cup, but there's a lot you can read in a beer bottle.
Yeah, I think so. Can you hear me okay? So
Loud and clear, yes.
okay, great. I think I met this family and they're really amazing, which is sort of how the idea came to me. Especially Madis, the daughter who runs the brewery and really runs the show right now. But the whole family is just really warm and powerful and thinks about peace and resistance and power in ways that I thought were new and exciting. Sort of the ways we can have power over others isn't always as apparent as brute force, but it can mean restriction of movement and restriction of natural resources, and economic restrictions and the ways that those get in the way of people's livelihoods and the success of a family. And to see the ways in which, Palestinians for generations have been finding really creative solutions to thriving in a really, really difficult and uncertain place is something I think right in this moment we all can kind of relate to. Sort of the restrictions on movement and economic success. Those are things I didn't expect to resonate so soon in our world. But yeah, so I think that there are a lot of layers to the way that the success of a Palestinian family could be a form of resistance, and a small business, the success and the exporting of a product from a small business can be a part of the success of and building of a nation.
Yeah. And Jen, you have similar messages in both your films, but they're also very different messages, because the one in Just Before Dawn, it's much more defiant than whereas Ibrahim's Tree is more portrayal of victimhood but resistance at the same time through maintaining life through a tree. But can you give us also a bit more about the context, because this is part of a series and they're all they were all done after 2009 or later? Are they based on what's the common theme?
Sure, yeah. And is my audio okay? Can everyone hear me okay?
Your audio is fine, yes.
Okay, great. So Ibrahim's Tree and Just Before Dawn are two segments of a 5-part video series that's called Remembering the Gaza War, which was produced, it was a 5-part video series produced jointly by my org, which is Donkey Saddle Projects, and Just Vision and IMEU, the Institute for Middle East Understanding. And the series came out last summer, summer 2019, right at the 5-year anniversary of the 2014 Gaza War. So all 5 stories in the series, including Just Before Dawn and Ibrahim's Tree, the two that are part of the film festival, are telling stories from the 2014 assault on Gaza. And so that's the connecting thread between the 5 stories. And we released one of those stories every 10 days last summer during the duration of the 51-day assault, the 5-year anniversary of the 51-day assault. And all of the footage from those films was filmed 6 months after. I think it was February 2015 that I was in Gaza filming the footage for what became that series. For most of the segments in the series was filmed in February 2015.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question? Was there more to the question?
Yes, and Samar Zain is asking a question. Yes, Samar, Bahij is here. She's sending us a message on the chat. Do you have a question for him?
Hello, Summer. Long time no see you. Very long time.
I don't know where the questions are. There's a chat.
The only question on the chat so far, I think, is to Emma about how the idea of the brewery story came to you, which I think maybe Emma.
I found them.
Great.
Okay, should I answer that question?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, I think I already kind of touched upon it in my last answer, but I think that the idea of the film came to me when I was living on the West Bank in Palestine, in Ramallah, and then I lived in Jordan for a little while as a journalist, and I noticed that people also on the Israeli side were enjoying this beer, this Palestinian beer, which I'd only seen in Palestine and in other parts of the Middle East, and was surprised to see Israelis enjoying this product too, and not in any particular political way. It's available at this place, Beer Bazaar, which is a very popular bar in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. So I thought that was really interesting to see the way that beer could break these barriers that humans in many ways have not been able to break. So I think that's where I got the idea of the ways in which you could tell the story of what's happening right now on the West Bank and what Palestinian families are going through, in maybe a way that might be accessible to people who weren't already interested in learning about that. Maybe people who just wanted to see a film about craft beer.
And they produce a wine called Nadim too.
They do. They have a wine called Nadim because Nadim is the father. Yeah. He's the patriarch of that family.
So Samar Zain has a question. Samar Zain said that her questions keep disappearing.
Yes, and I sent her a message and I said, I can see her questions. And don't worry about putting them on the screen because I can do it from here. So you just concentrate on the chat. And I need to tell you that Nadim, your voice keeps going in and out.
Yes, it depends how far I am from.
Yeah, when you go far from the mic, it's very faint. Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, I loved these movies when I saw them, and I thought, oh, look at this. We have 3 Palestinian films, and we can put them together. And of course, they're completely different approaches to the situation, but watched together, they give us a complete view of the reality of life over there. And of course, as I was saying earlier, when we were in our technical issue situation, especially right now, we need to bring these to the forefront. The situation of the people who build a home and it keeps being destroyed, and then you have to build it again and again and again. and it's like really terrible. And especially now with the blessings of the United States, to have people put their hands on further lands in the West Bank. This is outrageous. And of course, it has to be voiced out loud. And Jen's films point out to that and point to the type of life that the Palestinians are faced with. And of course, Emma's film brings another approach to it. I have a question here. Samar is asking the question for Emma. Can we buy the beer in the United States?
I think you can, yeah.
Yes, you absolutely can. You absolutely can. It's widely available in the US if you go to thaibaybeer.com.
That's
They have
cool.
they have locations listed.
Because I was thinking that if the festival had actually happened in March, that
we would have had, yeah,
to give out Thai beer afterwards. But
that would have been amazing. That would have been next year.
Yeah. So we have a question for Jen. As a filmmaker and playwright, do you tend to choose the story first and then the medium, or vice versa?
That's a great question. Thank you to Alida for asking it. Before being a filmmaker or a playwright or a journalist, I actually consider myself an activist first and foremost. And so for me, the form of storytelling is about what would be most useful in that moment. So whether I'm going to be writing an article or whether I'm going to be writing, in some cases, a press release, because that might be what's most useful is straight up organizing. My goal is to provide whatever platform, whosever story it is, whose voice I'm hoping to help amplify. I want to be working in partnership with that person or with that family in order to amplify their story in the terms that they feel would be most useful and most helpful.
We have another question from Samar. So sorry, I'm going with the questions now that people are getting engaged. To Bahij, it says, it is great to see you. The film was bittersweet in a very subtle way. Lots have been said over that corner. My question is, did you choose the location based on that
on the building?
Okay,
Okay, I will answer this.
Yes,
Okay,
Sam answer it.
Hi, Samar.
Because he knows exactly. Hi, Samar. Hello.
Okay. In fact, this building was there, and by mere coincidence, after trying to find a cafe that is good for the location and for the street and the view and everything, we found two cafes. In fact, one in Beirut, in West Beirut, and one where we shot the film in Monroe Street. And when we wanted to start the shooting, we discovered one day before a lot of trucks coming to destroy this building just facing the location of the shooting. And as filmmakers, you know how challenging it is to work in this condition, especially for the sound. And we tried all what we can with connections in Beirut to stop the act of destroying the building, because we want to shoot the film.
And it was just in front.
It was just in front, facing the street, like a couple of meters, and the trucks were working all the time. And then we reach an agreement with them that when we say action, they stop, and when we say cut, they start. So and on the second day, Bahij was passing, and he said, "No, we want this building as a part of the film," and I wanted to be. And he dedicated. We brought one additional cam, and this camera was just as per the directions of Bahij and the cinematographer. It was shooting just
on the film,
the building and all the faces. Yeah, from inside the cafe, definitely, because our camera didn't leave the cafe at all.
Yes. C'est le point de vue de deux de deux vieux personnes.
Yeah, because it's the point of view of those two persons.
Yes.
And
Everything in the street, it's the point of view of the two old men.
Exactly. So, and we ended up having the building as part of the film.
There is no zoom, no nothing, but just
Exactly.
eye view.
Exactly.
This is what
it's just
the,
one
the aesthetic choice.
And is it also significant that one of the men is a retired general? Because in Lebanon we have over 650 brigadier generals who are most of them are retired and in cafes, and they all have drivers and very little to do. Was that part of the design?
Non, it's not. It's only c'est seulement pour montrer des gens dignes qui ont une vie normale, qui ont des chauffeurs. Qui regardent la vie.
Yeah, it's because the writers and the director they had a choice in the film that those two senior citizens should be living a very in dignity and a very good life. And the choice of those two characters, like one doctor and one retired general, because those categories of life mainly, they have good retirement status. So we didn't, the director didn't want to go sympathetic with the characters. He didn't want the audience at any moment to feel sympathy for those two characters because of their life. Because usually when we deal with films for the third age, we tend to go sympathetic and to try to show that they are poor or they are retired, or no, those people, they are living in dignity with good life, and the suffering is more intellectual and internal rather than physical or just emotional.
Aussi le café, c'est pas du café, parce qu'on a choisi un café très normal. Et certains gens nous ont dit c'est pas un café libanais ou en Orient. Et c'est exactement ce qu'on a fait, parce que je veux sortir des schèmes et des clichés qui ont été trop montrés dans les films.
Yeah, exactly. And the choice of the cafe also, the director didn't want to take a choice like the regular chain cafes that you can see them everywhere. So it's an authentic cafe. Yeah, it's just a cafe for
folkloric coffee. No.
Yeah, definitely. It's not a folkloric cafe, not an nargile.
No stereotypes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's an authentic cafe, like the characters and those people.
Like many cafes in Beirut now.
Exactly.
We don't have café Zez avec tarbouche, nargile. Finished. It's only on some films. Only.
Yeah, it's only in cliché films.
And I hate cliché and folklore. I don't like. and my
if I may say so, because through these people and from the bay window that we are looking outside, we're basically getting a glimpse of Beirut, the way life is on a daily basis. Of course, that has changed a lot since the last events. Can you say something about what's going on right now and how this changes that lifestyle? Are these gentlemen still going and sitting at the cafe when there is a revolution going on outside?
La vie a beaucoup changé, يعني أكيد avec
Definitely, we have a lot of changes, Nora, now in Lebanon on the social term and on the economical term. You know that we had in the past 1 year, because of the revolution in October 17, and then came COVID, and then came the inflation in the economy. So now we lost approximately 300% of the value of the Lebanese lira. In 2 months, and a lot of cafes they closed, lot of places closed. Definitely life is changing. However, you know that the Lebanese people, at the first chance to go back to life, they will go back and they will go gradually up. But definitely now we are living a transitional phase in the history of Lebanon. A lot of things will be changed, even the lifestyles, even now you have a lot of products that you cannot find them in the supermarket. So we are under, I think I don't know, it's an undeclared sanctions, and the country is, so many incidents, the one after the other, made us reach today a different lifestyle. Definitely what you saw in the film now is a little bit changing.
Maybe we are...
La destruction de l'immeuble, la mort d'une...
Yes.
Il y a quelque chose qu'on a prévu un peu dans le film.
What you see in the film, like the deaths of one of the characters and the destruction of the building, it's a kind of previewing what the country is going to. So,
Exactly.
like, because we're seeing this since 10 years that we are going to hit the wall at a certain moment, and now we reach the wall.
And is the wall anything related to Gaza? Because we are, in a way, going towards, in Beirut, the discussion is, are we going towards a Greek crisis or a Venezuelan crisis or a Gaza crisis? Are we going to turn into one of these countries? I'm also trying to use this as a segue to get back to Jan.
Yeah.
How does one reach a situation like Gaza?
How does one reach a situation like Gaza? I mean, there's so many different levels and layers, I think, of oppression that has led to the situation in Gaza. Gaza is people that friends of mine in Gaza, folks that I spend time with there, talk about living under multiple occupations. And certainly the primary occupation is from the Israeli, from Israel, which Israel likes to say that it no longer occupies Gaza. Israel likes to claim that once they pulled their settlements out of Gaza in 2005, that the occupation of Gaza has ended. But of course, according to international law, Gaza is still very much occupied by Israel and is also besieged, is under siege. So that's another layer. And the government in Gaza, there's been so many attempts to unify the Palestinian Authority, most of which have, they've different reasons have not come to fruition. And so there are a lot of folks in Gaza who support the Hamas leadership, but a lot of the folks I know very resolutely don't, and feel that there's another level of repression and oppression that they're experiencing internally, and in different ways. All of those levels of repression, and from the border with Egypt is compliant in many ways with the suffocation of Gaza. Certainly, the U.S. government is very much holds responsibility in that, as well as all of the governments that allow those injustices to continue. So all of those factors taken together is, I think, how you get to a situation that is Gaza, and which fundamentally means that there's a world in which that level of human suffering is considered acceptable. So I think as long as we live in a world where that level of human suffering, whether we're seeing that suffering happen in Gaza or in Syria or in Lebanon or any other place in the world, or in the US, when human suffering is considered acceptable, then the conditions exist for those situations to occur.
You see, when you say acceptable, you're almost saying whether they matter or not, and you're so in a sense, do Palestinian lives matter now, and as opposed to, say, Syrian lives, who matter probably less. This comparison between levels of suffering is a very important theme now, even here in the US.
Yeah, and I think I don't think the question is comparing suffering. I think first of all, there's systems that operate in the world of power and privilege that determine which lives have value. and capitalism is a part of those systems, and white supremacy is a part of those systems. And there's people all over the world who are impacted by those systems of power and privilege. And so on one level, it is all very interconnected. And then, of course, there is specificity of context. So the movement for Black Lives here in the U.S. that's calling on the world to recognize that Black Lives Matter. There's points of connection to that call, to what's happening to Palestinian lives and Syrian lives and lives all over the world. But there's also a very particular context and specificity of anti-Black racism, which again is connected to white supremacy and to capitalism, which are forces that have devalued lives all over the world. So I think we both have to recognize where that is connected and demand that every human life and every human being's needs and their rights are given equal weight. And also recognize the specificity of context and support all of these different uprisings where they're happening, uprisings calling for equity and calling for liberation and calling for justice, and find ways to connect the folks in those struggles with each other so that those struggles maybe can be strengthened. That's
exactly what I'm trying to lead you to, because some of my Syrian friends complain that American radicals don't care about Syrian lives. How would you categorize this? Because there is this impression that the radical left in the US, and the radical candidates in the elections had the Syrian conflict in very low on their priorities, and that there's this feeling amongst Syrians that the radicals that they don't have the same feelings towards them as they do with the same values. Do you recognize this as a problem?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I don't feel like I can speak on behalf of the radical left vis-a-vis Syria or any other issue. I will say that I absolutely think that it's very true that Syria deserves and needs more of the world's attention, and that the suffering of the people in Syria and the refugees who have fled from Syria is profound and enormous, and demands our attention and demands our support globally. No question about that. And I don't think that's a matter of saying less attention on this group of people or less attention on this group of people. I think it's a question of that we have to expand our attention in a sense, and we have to.
I think the way the question was put to me is about consistency of values and messaging, which they found. But going back to a link with Taipei, I mean, we're talking here about investment, about in an enterprise, and specifically about Gulf investment, because in your film, in Ibrahim's Tree, the reconstruction was financed by Qatar, if I remember correctly, and we had this. So there's a peace proposal on the table that ignores the political issues but talks about bringing investments to Palestine, which has been rejected. Do we feel that? I mean, it's also similar in Lebanon. We have aid that's not being processed because of for political reasons. They said their money is being blocked from coming to Lebanon as well for political reasons. So how do you see the future coming? How do you see this connection? I mean, is there another vision? Are there contradictory visions between a film like Taibeh and films about Gaza? I'm not trying to create problems between the two filmmakers.
Are you asking me or Emma or both?
I'm asking everyone.
Oh.
We're talking about the future of the region. We're talking about investment. We're talking about openness, and we're talking at the same time about destruction and closure and sieges and wars. And you have different messaging from the films. I mean, I loved the message from the woman in the second film. What's it called? I forgot her.
Dawn.
I forgot.
I think you're talking about
I forgot her name. Azza, yes, Azza Qasim. That she doesn't want. She feels that sympathy is offensive to her. Whereas the other film has sympathy, and so there are all these messages coming that are sometimes contradictory about the situation.
Well, I guess I would push back on that a little bit. I think in Ibrahim's Tree, I think we're certainly invited to feel compassion for that family, but I think we're also invited in to see their strength and their resilience. Not just represented by the fact that the tree turned out to survive and was thriving, but it's also the film itself intercuts them talking about the tree with images of the children playing and and dancing and singing and experiencing joy and growing. So I think you're seeing enormous strength and resilience, not just victimhood, in both of those films. And I'll just, I'll quickly address, and then I also would love to hear I don't want to dominate, but I don't see a contradiction between economic stability or like folks being able to provide for themselves and their families and live lives of dignity economically. That for me, the contradiction is only if that is being offered as a substitute for political self-determination and for liberation. It can never be a substitute. It will never, and that's the issue. Isn't whether or not folks can thrive economically, and is that a contradictory message? It's a question of whether that's being dangled in front of them to placate them instead of true self-determination on a political level.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. I think there's no, as when you spend time out there, you see how the restrictions on the economic restrictions are so political. So you can't just give money and hope that, certain parts of the situation are resolved. There's no substitute for all the ways in which power has been taken away from Palestinians, from people on both the West Bank and in Gaza. I think that there's no real middle ground here. You can't offer one and not the other. I think that's I couldn't agree more with what Jen said.
Great. Now I've got two messages, two new ones. One is from Samar again, asking if the general died, and in the end of the film, we're left wondering whether he did or not. And I have a question from Elidash Bailey to Jen Marlowe, saying, as a filmmaker and playwright, do you tend to choose the story first and then the medium, or vice versa? How do you decide if a subject, if a story is a film or a play? But Bahij, did the general die?
In the film or after the film?
He died in the film.
He died after the shooting. He died really after the shooting. Unfortunately,
in the film, it's an open end. You cannot know.
He is absent.
He's absent. Yeah.
Absent.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, in real life, he died after shooting the film, and he didn't.
Yes.
He was not there to attend.
You mean in real life he died?
Right, yes.
I
But
see. Okay, but
was-
in the film, it's open-ended.
it's open, and he was good.
He was one of the good actors in Lebanon, and he did even he had a good health. He had a good health, but suddenly he had a problem and he died. And he also acted in another film for Ahmed Hussein, and the film was premiered in Venice. And the poor guy, he didn't attend both films.
Yes.
He didn't watch them even.
But Samar knows Adil Shaheen, I think.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Because he was a professor in Beaux-Arts.
Right.
He was in Beaux-Arts summer, and I was a professor too.
Yeah. Samar should know him, I think, in person. She's the asking. But in the film, definitely, it's an open ending.
Right. And Jen, how do you choose the medium?
Yeah, I think Nora had actually asked that question a little while ago, and I was talking about that. As an activist, I try to bring. I view my writing and my filmmaking as tools that I can offer, and depending on the situation, depending on what the needs are of the person or the family who I'm partnering with, in order for them to tell their story. You know, I will try to make an offering that feels like what's most useful in that moment, or what's being asked of me in that moment.
We have it's not a question. It's a friend telling me, Nadim, you are too close to the screen. We see your nose only because when I'm far you can't hear me. But I've just put these on, so I hope it's better. And I'm trying to look at the questions. Nora, can you see the questions better than me?
Actually, I'm terribly sorry. I had to go away because my screen completely froze. I could hear and see you, but I couldn't do anything. That's why throughout that everybody was talking, you had Sam Lahoud's message. I don't know what's going on today. It might be an Israeli conspiracy.
Well, we were completely out of control when you were away, Nora.
But you did a great job. I followed it on my phone and it went on. It's just that I couldn't participate. I couldn't take out the banners. I couldn't. So here is Henry, who's saying his death was a real drama. He couldn't see the movie in which he participated. And earlier on, Samar was saying that it was representing Beirut in a way, and its struggle to survive and find joy still until the end. And it wasn't clear if he died or not, but then it also leaves us wondering. And earlier, I had another thought that came to my mind when we were saying that the currency has been devalued 300 times or whatever, but then Lebanon has always a way of pulling itself back, and that's why it's called Phoenicia. That's why it's the phoenix rising from its own ashes, you know? So I think there is still a time where we are going to see the Lebanon, or Beirut as we have known it, as in its prime time, and it's all going to come back to normal, just as we wish our lives are going to come back to normal after this COVID business. So, yeah. So maybe since I'm back on the screen, I'll take this opportunity to thank everyone and to thank our moderator, to Nadim. Thank you so much for being with us and moderating this conversation. And to our filmmakers, thank you so much. To Sam for bringing us this film, for putting it to my attention, and also for serving on our jury. But it's not a conflict of interest because he's on the documentary jury.
Yeah. Thank you.
And we wish you all the best for your new film. And as an actress, can I say, Can I audition for it?
Of course.
And, I also collaborated with Jen on a play she did. There is a, what was it called? There is a life. No?
There is a field.
نعملوا لايف مش على
Yeah, it's called there is a field, and the documentary film version of that play will be completed within the next
It
couple
was
of weeks.
about the killing of a young kid, and it was really very poignant piece that I was very happy and proud to have participated in. And Emma, thank you so much for being with us as well from your busy schedule. She's covering a lot of stories as a journalist these days. And Nadim, for everything, you know, for your support for the Lebanese American University and all our sponsors and partners. I also have a little, because we have one of the socially relevant film festival. It's Indie Picks. I'll hold it to the screen. And
Yes.
they have offered DVDs. You can enter to win at all of these, each of these chats, there's going to be a winner of a DVD. So people who are watching, if you have entered to win, you can potentially become the winner. We have a couple of comments here. Regards to my friend Bahij. Okay, it's
From
Henry
Ari.
Zoe.
Yeah.
And we have Albert, who says thank you all.
Albert Omar is our invisible hand at LAU.
And
Without him,
Samar,
nothing
who says
works.
miss you all, guys. So anyway, so it's good that we had a bunch of comments and questions. It was quite animated. And apologies again for the delayed start. I don't know what's going on with my computer. I think I need to reboot it, or maybe it's telling me that it's overworked.
Have to remove some media from it.
Yeah. So, but anyway, thank you all. Thank you to our sponsors and all the filmmakers.
Thank you, Nora, and I hope next
you,
year
Nora.
we will be able to hold it physically and all go to a
Yeah,
bar
maybe
afterwards.
we're gonna have the beer. We're gonna have the Lebanese food. We're gonna have the party and everything. By the way,
Sounds
on
great.
The 28th at 4 p.m. we have the awards evening, and
Yes.
at 4 p.m. It might be a little too late for the Lebanese, but I think you're not scared of staying up. So join us. We're going to give out the awards and have a virtual party.
Ah,
So
Beautiful.
everybody can bring their own drinks, and but that one is on Zoom. It's not here, because here we can only have 6 people at a time, whereas in Zoom we can have as many as 100 panelists. So I want to introduce the moderators, the jury, the filmmakers, the audience members, whoever is there, and we'll have a ball. Thank you all again, and again, apologies for the.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nora.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
So we can continue to talk after the
Are-
broadcast.